Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation of the paper Protecting Personal Space in Social Virtual Worlds, the impact of proximity control features on adoption intention. The authors of this paper are myself, Runjie, Florian, Franke, Sandra, Birnstiel, and Professor Benedikt Morschheuser. With that, let's dive into the motivation of this study. Virtual worlds and social VR, recently also known as the metaverse, constitute 3D virtual spaces that allow co-presence and shared experiences through embodied avatars across a range of activities. Such activities can foster emotional and interpersonal connections. However, such virtual worlds are plagued by persistent issues of harassment. Harassment can be defined as a behavior that continues despite a victim's request to stop. In social virtual worlds, it often takes forms of non-consensual interactions with a victim's avatar. Harassment is frequent, often affects vulnerable users, causes psychological distress, and can reduce engagement with the technology. Media coverage of harassment amplifies public concern and can negatively influence attitudes towards adopting social virtual worlds. Because harassment in social virtual worlds is a technology-mediated issue, effective system design, such as proxemics-based controls, can play an important role in deterring it. To tackle the problem of harassment, many platforms have already introduced a range of safety features, with preventive safety bubbles and reactive avatar blocking being the most prominent forms. While prior research has mainly examined harassment experiences and platform moderation, proximity control features have only recently started to attract attention. We still know very little about how having these features available affects user intention to adopt technologies such as social virtual worlds. This leads us to our main research question. How does proximity control features in social virtual worlds affect user perceptions of adoption factors compared to environments without such features? Let's take a quick look at the background. The theory of proxemics introduced by Edward Hall explains how humans use space and distance to communicate and manage social interactions. It describes how we rely on our senses to maintain a comfortable physical distance in face-to-face encounters. Hall identifies four proxemic zones, from farthest to closest, which are public, social, personal, and intimate zones. The public zone is for larger audiences, where facial details and voices become less perceptible. The social zone applies to formal or unfamiliar interactions, minimizing physical contact while still enabling cautious observation of the full body. The personal zone is typical for friends and family, allowing occasional touch and clear perception of nonverbal cues. Finally, the intimate zone is reserved for close relationships, allowing physical contact like hugging and detailed visual focus on the face. Harassment in social virtual worlds can be categorized into visual, verbal, physical, and sexual dimensions, and can generally be understood as invasions of proxemic zones. Visual harassment usually happens in the public zone, exposing users to offensive content, like provocative avatar designs, sexual gestures, violent imagery, or virtual stalking. Verbal harassment occurs in the social zone through proximity-based voice chat. It includes insults, threats, hate speech, and disruptive sounds. Physical harassment involves personal space invasions, such as disruptive avatar movements or blocking passes and conversations. Sexual harassment is the most severe form, occurring in the intimate zone. This includes non-consensual touching and virtual groping. A key strategy to protect users in social virtual worlds is maintaining personal space, since harassment often comes from unwanted intrusions into an avatar's proximity. A widely used preventive tool is the safety bubble. This safety bubble creates an invisible zone around the user's avatar, making intruding avatars invisible and inaudible. This prevents unwanted touches, speech, or interactions. Unlike safety bubbles, which are less commonly used due to limited familiarity, reactive tools like avatar blocking are much more widespread. Many users already know them from online games or social media. Blocking acts as an immediate response to unwanted attention or abuse. It hides and silences the selected avatar and prevents the blocked users from seeing or hearing the blocker. Indirect interactions are also limited, since blocked users often cannot send messages or requests. There are many factors that influence adoption intentions. In our study, we focus on 6 key dimensions: trust, safety, reliability, control, satisfaction, and user intention. Trust refers to the belief in the system's trustworthiness and integrity for performing specific tasks. Safety is an individual's sense of being secure in a given environment, situation, or while using a system. Reliability is a belief that a system functions properly and consistently over time without interruptions. Control reflects the extent to which individuals feel they can manage or influence their behavior within the system. Satisfaction is a person's overall evaluation of how well the system meets their cognitive and emotional needs. And finally, use intention is the perceived likelihood that someone will engage with the system in the future. For our hypothesis, we expect that social virtual worlds with proximity control features will lead to higher levels of trust, safety, reliability, control, satisfaction, and use intention. For our methodology, we conducted a between subjects online vignette study to explore how users perceive proximity control features during a personal space invasion scenario in a social virtual world. Participants were randomly assigned to one of 3 vignettes, each showing a different proximity control condition. We used Roblox-based video recordings rather than exposing participants to real VR harassment. This approach allowed us to create realistic scenarios while avoiding any harm, and we designed 3 video vignettes to depict a realistic personal space invasion in social virtual worlds. While all 3 show the same scenarios, they differ in the implemented safety feature shown, either no safety feature in V1, or safety bubble in V2, or avatar blocking in V3. The scenario was created in Roblox Studio using prescripted interactions. Regarding the procedure, informed consent was obtained from our participants before the study began. The study started with demographic questions, allowed by a brief definition of proxemic invasions in our research context. Participants then indicated their familiarity with and relevance perceptions of the topic. They were then randomly assigned to one of the 3 conditions and instructed to watch the video stimuli, with the option to rewatch it. Finally, they evaluated it by completing a survey assessing the dependent variables. Then, participants received a short debriefing and a small compensation. Participants were recruited in February and March 2025 by a Germany-wide consumer panel managed by a market research institute. Conducted one-way wells ANOVA to test our hypothesis, and post-hoc comparisons were conducted using games-hour tests. The analysis showed significant differences across the 3 vignettes for all dependent variables. However, the proximity control feature conditions were not always significantly better than the control condition without safety features. As a result, hypotheses H2 and H3 were rejected, while H1, H4, H5, and H6 were supported. Let's move on to the discussion. Virtual personal space is both psychologically and emotionally important in social virtual worlds. Proximity invasions can cause real discomfort, highlighting the need for protective features, whether in immersive VR or desktop environments. Our findings show that safety features improve adoption-related factors like trust, perceived safety, reliability, controllability, user satisfaction, and intention to use, making platforms more inclusive and appealing. When comparing features, preventive safety bubbles clearly outperform reactive avatar blocking. They proactively protect users and allow customizable consent-based control over personal space. In contrast, reactive tools rely on the user's response and cannot fully prevent distress. That said, safety bubbles come with trade-offs. They are more complex, require some learning effort, and might impose limits on social interactions, with some residual exposure to harassment. Avatar blocking, on the other hand, is simpler, intuitive, and easy to use, even if it offers less proactive protection. With this research, we make three main contributions. First, we provide initial evidence on how safety features influence people's perceptions and adoption of social virtual worlds. Second, we offer an empirical comparison of preventive and reactive safety features by directly contrasting safety bubbles and avatar blocking. Third, we contribute methodologically by collecting immediate responses to controlled video stimuli from a representative sample of the German population, advancing how safety features are studied in social virtual environments. Previous work has mostly relied on interviews, retrospective surveys, or post-hoc reports, which depend on participants' memory and often conflate different types of harassment without considering severity. In contrast, our vignette study presents the same personal space invasion scenario across conditions. Thank you for watching. For more details, feel free to check out the full paper. If you have any questions or are interested in collaborating, don't hesitate to get in touch.